Hunger and malnutrition affect every aspect of human development and persist for various reasons, including unequal access to land, to sufficient and nutritious food, and to other productive resources. Agricultural production needs to increase to address this unequal access to food and resources and to meet the needs of a growing world population. What needs to be done and the role of science in all of this are our focus today on EarthFowl. Welcome to the program. I'm Ayola Kasim. African agriculture must be transformed in the coming decade. This is one fact experts are telling us. With the population going towards 2 billion people, at least twice as much food must be produced. But food production per capita has been declining since the 1960s, and cereal crop yields have remained stagnant. In the face of this dire situation, observers are pointing to a perfect storm of further challenges.
There is no way Africa is going to make progress without addressing key issue of agriculture production and productivity, which is the lowest in the world. And for Africa to do that, that's mean in real term increasing yield of major crops by 60% per year.
Advances in agricultural science and technology have contributed to remarkable increases in food production since the mid-20th century. Global agriculture has grown 2.5 to 3 times over the last 50 years. This has let food production keep pace with human population growth so that overall there are enough calories produced per capita. However, progress towards reducing hunger is variable across the world. Reformed agri-food systems will also need to navigate complex resource limits imposed in part by environmental degradation to which modern agriculture has contributed. So the challenge for agriculture is threefold: to increase agricultural production, especially of nutrient-rich foods, to do so in ways which reduce inequality and to reverse and prevent resource degradation. Science and technology can play a vital role in meeting these challenges, for example, by developing innovations that smallholders with limited resources can afford.
One dimension we're trying to emphasize is that there is a lot that can be done just by diversifying the kind of crops that we have. You know, when we talk about nutrition, for instance, there are so many ways in which you can enhance nutrition. But a very basic way to enhance and improve nutrition is eat right. And eating right basically means eating healthy plants and products that will give you the kind of balance in nutrients that you need. And a lot of that comes from diversification on farm. You know? So if you're able to bring that mindset that, hey, it's important, our farmers must be made to understand that just eating eba all the time with very little, stew does not help. And that, they need to diversify, they need to get all this, what do you call it, wedu and all these other things. Bring it in there, and it's important to have that diversity. So people have that, mindset. And the more you can broaden this diversity basket in the farm, the likelihood is that you will broaden the diversity basket in your plate.
How to encourage integrated systems research for sustainable intensification in smallholder agriculture was the focus of an international conference organized by the CG Consortium. Agricultural scientists and researchers from over 30 nations gathered recently at the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture in Ibadan.
Very, very supportive.
The participants presented strategies and results that respond directly to the Sustainable Development Goals outlined by the United Nations and have a marked impact on lives and livelihoods of smallholder producers and consumers of developing countries. Development experts say considerable progress has been made towards those goals, but much is yet to be done, despite significant economic growth in many developing countries over the past decade. Over 800 million people remain undernourished, including 160 million children, according to recent Lancet reports. Undernutrition remains the underlying cause of death for at least 3.1 million children a year, accounting for fully 45% of all deaths of children under 5, and stunting the growth of another 165 million.
This conference here focuses on one of the trickiest problems in reaching those goals. It's not just coming up with single technologies, but how those can come together to provide livelihood opportunities for farmers, get access to markets for farmers, as well as maintain and improve the ecosystems, the soils that provide a basis for them.
Now we realize we not only need to generate more calories, we need to improve nutrition, and we need to, as Frank said, protect our ecosystems. But what we're increasingly realizing is that we need the ecosystems actually to continue to generate the increased production, increased productivity. And it's this cycle. It's not only that we have these individual systems, it's the cycle and the interdependencies between food security, nutrition security, and improved environment that I think this conference and these research programs are trying to address. We at Biodiversity International believe that agricultural biodiversity, both at the genetic level, the species level, and the landscape level, are very important to helping us improve productivity over the long term by providing genetic resources, help to manage agricultural pests and diseases by using diversity within species, and ensuring that the landscape can provide nutrition and can also improve our environmental quality. So this systems thinking is, I think, really important to helping us resolve the very complex challenges of our time.
The agricultural sciences argue that systems research offers solutions to tackle poverty, hunger, and environmental degradation together. System research is place-based and operates at different scales: farm, landscape, province, agroeconomical zone, region, and so on. It targets a limited number of regions and agroecologies that are home to high concentrations of the world's poor and that offer significant agricultural potential. Systems research requires taking a holistic perspective and looking at the system as a whole in order to understand the diversity of components that exist in it and how these components interact with each other, with the aim of understanding trade-offs, optimizing synergies, and enhancing overall productivities. The farmer and his community are central in this research approach, including exploring the specific roles and opportunities for women, men, and youths.
The critical thing is that if you have a piece of land and you are growing one particular crop just as a monocrop, in other words, by itself, year after year after year after year after year, that crop, there are certain elements that it needs. So it will continue to mine the soil based on what it needs. And especially when you are not replenishing, putting fertilizer, etc. inside, after a while, you have really no productivity. The other danger is that because you are growing that same crop year after year, the crop also has enemies. And those enemies are the pests and diseases that attack the crop. So those enemies get to know, this crop, this land is guaranteed for maize, which is what we want, and they are waiting for you all the time. So you crop your thing and the pests get in there. So not only are you losing your fertility, you are also creating more enemies for your system. And in no time, you are, really down to. So we're saying that if you're going to have to do monocropping, you've got to do it with understanding, okay? Know the kind of resources, both biological, in terms of fertilizer, that are needed, and also be conscious of the kind of pests that have to be brought in. You've got to manage this. You may want to bring in something like a rotation system, okay? So you might grow a crop of maize and say, this next year we want to put some, cowpeas or something in there, rotate it. Just create a bit more, diversity in the way these things are done. So that process is on. Secondly, there are scenarios where you can look at intercropping, okay? So you have your maize, instead of having all maize, you can have maize and beans in an intercropped framework. Because the beans, they have a way in which they bring health to your soil. And your maize, therefore, is able to benefit from that partnership, you know. And you can look at different levels of intercropping. Sometimes it can even involve trees, particular trees that are beneficial, that can also bring some livelihood benefits, you know, to the farmers. And you bring these things in within an agroforestry sort of context. So I think it's really about understanding where the opportunities are for particular, you know, scenarios that you are in, and then figuring out how best to work together with the farmer, you know, to raise the level of overall productivity.
What is clear, many say, is that Nigeria has the potential to utilize its human and material resources to achieve food security, produce raw materials for its industry, and raise the level of its foreign earnings if only the government can be consistent with its policies and focus on research and development.
Using science to be involved in breeding, you know, looking at real so you are breeding for drought tolerance. If you know, for instance, that over the next 20 years, the water level for Ibadan is going to be cut by 4%, 5%, 10%. It means the crops that we are growing today, the amount of water they are demanding, by that time, they will not be able to grow. So you start to do two things. First, you start to breed for the kind of crop that will require much less water. So you are preparing yourself, you know, for that sort of thing.
There is controversy over whether GM can increase crop yields while conserving resources. GM crops in commercial cultivation mainly express two traits: herbicide tolerance and pest resistance. These traits promise higher yields with lower pesticide use. However, their impacts have been variable and depend on a range of external factors.
Seed is clear, it's a planting material. Grain is what...
Dr. Yemi Akinbamijo is the Executive Director of Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa, FARA.
FARA is the continental warehouse. We coordinate everything on agricultural innovations, science and technology, any space between Cairo and Cape Town.
FARA was conceived in the late 1990s by a core group of committed champions, including both African scientists and